As the Story Grows, I'm Brad Patton. Today we welcome Defense's vocalist, Cherry Duesbury, to the podcast. Defense's released Shadowlight back on November 8th with Long Branch Records. Cherry talks about the impact of the Myspace emo scene, seeing more representation in underground music scenes, being the focal point of the art direction for Shadowlight, the themes on the album, and more. Shadowlight is a killer record, and I definitely recommend giving it a spin. Thanks so much for listening to As the Story Grows. If you're brand new to the podcast, welcome. I would love it if you subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. You can find links in the show notes or over at asthestorygrows.com to come hang out with our podcast community on Discord, to sign up for our mailing list, or you can support the show financially and get early access to every episode on Patreon. Over on Patreon, I just shared a Spotify playlist with my 30 favorite EPs and singles of the year. Enjoy getting to know Cherry from Defenses.
It's not fair, no, they don't care, no, didn't get to.
Sorry for the mix-up. The email said Friday, and I was like, cool. And then I was like, oh, shit, no, there's a...
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
I think it was a mix-up where that was meant for someone else and not me, so...
Okay.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Just had a busy work day today, so trying to switch gears into...
Yeah. It's like, now that the boring part of my day is done, get to have the exciting, fun part and
Yes.
talk about fun stuff. Where are you in the UK?
So I actually recently moved in Kent now, which is absolutely beautiful. Kind of, I guess, what would it be? Southeast, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I only moved in about a month ago, so still have a lot to explore around here. I was in North London before. Okay. So it's a slightly different vibe.
Yeah. What made you leave? Just looking for a different pace of life for work or a band?
Yeah, I mean, I only moved to the city like 3 years ago. And, I wanted to experience it because I'd always lived like London adjacent. I'd always been able to kind of travel and be in London within like an hour kind of thing. Pretty much my whole life, but I'd never lived in London. So I really wanted to experience that. So I did. And in experiencing that, I met my partner, and he's a London born and bred, lived there his whole life. We both kind of wanted a bit of a change. And so we wanted to go somewhere that was still kind of London adjacent and with very easy access into London, because we both still work in London. I mean, I work from home most days, but he still has to go in every day.
Oh, man.
And, when I do have to go into the office, it's London that I'm going to. So, still need to be close by, but getting out of London was something that we both kind of wanted. So this was perfect.
Yeah. I went to London. Oh, man. I guess it's been like 2.5 years now at this point, but it was just like wild because I'm from DC, and so there's so much similar architecture. It's obviously it's older over there, but I was like, it's a little bit like being at home still, which is crazy. Never got used to cars on the opposite side of the road though. That
always freaks me out when I go to America.
Anytime you cross the street, it's like just wait for the light.
Literally.
Yeah. What got you into music?
I've just always loved music, literally my whole life. I grew up around people who really loved music. I had family members who were radio presenters and dancers, and so there was just, music was always just a thing in my life. From a really early age, I kind of discovered that I really loved singing in particularly, and then kind of in my teenage years kind of started to really love songwriting and, writing lyrics, and, got very emo and angsty and got into my lyric writing that way, basically. But yeah, always knew that I wanted to kind of do music. It's it's one of those big dreams that every kind of kid has, isn't it? It's either musician or astronaut or, president or something like that. But yeah, no, the passion was real and kind of true for me from a really young age, and I kind of just kept working at it in little ways as I kind of grew up.
Nice. Were you like a theater kid or in chorus, choir, like?
Choir and rock band. So yeah, I was in the school choir, but my school also had like a extracurricular after school rock band thing, and so I was a part of that. But then there was this outside of school. There was this program called Stagecoach.
Okay.
That my mum sent me and my sisters to at the weekends, which was dance, acting, and singing. So I think it was like 3 hours on a Saturday, and it was an hour for each.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of really developed my love for, musical arts in general that way.
Yeah. When things get angsty and you kind of discover emo or hardcore or whatever, what are like bands or albums that really impacted you?
Oh God. Well, to be fair, the first, second, and third, but especially the first My Chemical Romance album was a big one for me. Okay. And The Used as well. The first two, The Used albums were big. And then going a little bit further back, if we're talking about like proper peak emo times, from first to last. Were a big one. Silverstein were a big one. Just all those kind of bands, the typical emo, screamo bands of the early Myspace era. I was about all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm old enough that when that stuff was like popular, I'd like come through like the 90s Midwest scene. So like, when that stuff was emo, I was like, no, fuck that. Like, like that's not real emo.
Yeah. No, my partner's exactly the same. Because my partner's a couple years older than me.
Yeah.
So, we're just in slightly different brackets in that regard. So at the time that I was going through my emo phase, he was already past that.
Yeah.
It was like, he didn't listen to Finch, but like Finch and Pryor, that kind of, OG emo, OG post-hardcore. And he says the same thing. It's not real.
That's funny. What was the music scene like, whether it was in London or out in, adjacent? Like, was it a good scene that you could be involved in? Were there lots of local bands, or was it just listening to MySpace or radio or whatever?
There were a lot of local bands. My local bands were they were heavier than like the average emo bands. It was more heading towards like hardcore. I'm struggling to think of any names though that I might recognize now. Maybe like The Eyes of a Traitor. Don't know if you know that band. Or that band, but yeah, that kind of vibe. There was another one called Evita that I really loved. And then some kind of like slightly different bands. Enter Shikari were actually a local band to me. They played in my local venue. So like early Enter Shikari, that kind of stuff. Yeah. There was a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, back then, it's funny because back then it was kind of like a pipe dream to me to imagine myself in that scene and like a part of it, because like being honest, back then it was all just white dudes. It was all just white dudes. Bands and like all the bands that were kind of getting big at the time, and especially in like my local venue, the one that I saw, all those bands in Shikari and stuff. I kind of had this pipe dream of one day being on that stage, and we did actually play it a few years back, so that was cool.
That's awesome. It is cool to see the scene, like whether it's in metal, hardcore, emo, whatever, like the younger generation has like embraced the diversity and like gender equality, where it's not just white dudes everywhere, and it's just it's a lot better now.
It has definitely like improved in such a massive way, especially in just the last few years. I've noticed like the range of artists emerging and like blowing up is incredible now. And then, there's a lot more, representation just generally of people of color. So yeah, it's really good.
Let's talk about the band. How did Defenses get started?
So Defenses got started a decade ago, 10 years ago. And so I had just moved back to the UK from America. I was living in Virginia for a while because my mum and my sisters were out there.
Oh, nice.
And so I came back and I was trying to find my footing, and I knew I wanted to join a band. So I literally just recorded myself doing a couple of vocal covers and stuck it up on joinmyband.co.uk. That was the name of the website. and create a little ad on there. And Callum, the guitarist, and Ed, who's the OG guitarist from album 1, they saw it and kind of invited me along to audition. They liked me and my voice, and it kind of just clicked from there. There were some previous members in the band at the time, and it was very, very early days. We don't even really consider that Defenses. It's kind of the band before Defenses.
Okay.
But later down the line, we found Kyle, I think, also through the same website. And then Kyle had a friend who was a bassist, and it kind of just went on from there. And we've had a couple member changes over the years, but like the core group has kind of stayed the same. And now we have Will and Owen, and like a complete unit now, which is cool.
Nice.
But it's been a long old road.
Yeah. What was the inspiration for the band name?
So the original OG band that I mentioned was called Flatline.
Okay.
And so we wrote the song that is now called Let You In, and a big kind of theme of that song was Defenses. So I called that song Defenses. And we kind of just really preferred that as a band name. So we changed the name of the song to be Let You In and decided to call ourselves Defenses instead. Just because it's quite strong sounding, and that is quite a big element of a lot of our songwriting, is kind of talking about strength. I mean, it certainly was in the early days. If you listen to album 1, a lot of that is, talking about strength and kind of advocating for yourself and, fighting through adversity and stuff. And it kind of just has a strong sound to it.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it comes from.
Yeah. Is that like a British spelling of the word Defenses? Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Awesome. How'd the band end up with Long Branch Records?
Oh, kind of by accident. It was luck. It really was just luck, which is cool because when it comes to like random band things like that like random opportunities like that, we haven't been all that lucky over the years, but this was like an incredible one. We had been pitching with our manager for like the whole summer, and we'd kind of come to the end of that season, and we got a random email from someone at I think it was someone at Napalm asking us to do a podcast. And we couldn't do it, so we were literally it was kind of a joke at the time. Callum, the guitarist, was like, we need to reply basically saying no, but how about like a record deal? So it was like, a jokey along those lines kind of email that we went back with, and they came back saying that they were really into us, they really loved us, but they weren't sure that we would be the right fit. But it was SBV, not Napalm. It was Napalm. They knew someone at SBV, and they thought that they would have a better fit for us. And obviously, Brunch are part of SBV, so they kind of directed us there. And we knew of them anyway because good friends of ours, As Everything Unfolds, were signed to them at the time. And so we kind of, spoke to them, and they had nothing but awesome stuff to say about those guys. So we met with them, and it all kind of just flowed from there. They really loved the product that we've been working on and kind of the message behind it and everything. And we're really excited by it. So it all kind of just flowed from there, really. It was crazy.
Nice. The band put out In the Balance January of 2021. Not like the best time to put out an album. What was your experience kind of navigating lockdown? I know things were like crazy in the UK, even more so than they were stateside. Like, what was that experience of putting that record out?
It was really crazy. Yeah. The pandemic came around the time that we were actually, like, in terms of like that first lockdown, when it all kind of kicked off around March 2020. Yeah. That was around the time that we were supposed to be going into the studio to record that album. So obviously all of that got pushed back by months and months, but it actually ended up being a bit of a blessing in disguise for us, because it meant that we had a bunch of extra time to work on songs more and workshop more and write more. And so, we did just that. My memory of lockdown is literally being on Zoom meetings all the time with the band, literally screen sharing Logic sessions.
Oh man.
Writing songs and going through and making tweaks and like doing all of this editing and stuff to songs. That and spending time in nature, which is where I did a lot of writing. And so we actually ended up writing a couple new songs that wouldn't have been on the album had it not been for that time. Which, I think is, kind of crazy to even think about. The kind of first year of it all in 2020 was, we just used the time that we had been given to make the album even better, essentially, and then planned how we were going to release it and the shows we were going to do around it and stuff. And so, when it actually came out, we had a fairly good footing with it all. So, the releases for all the singles went really well. And then we had a really good kind of build up to the album launch and then the release show. And around the time that the release show happened, shows had started to come back. Oh, nice. And so it was starting to feel a little bit more like, what normal was when it came to live music.
Yeah.
So it all kind of worked out quite well for us.
That's awesome. You guys have this brand new record, Shadowlight. It's the closing track on the album, but what led to that as the album title and kind of the thematic elements of this record?
So Shadowlight in general is kind of the overall idea that essentially formed what the whole album became. Okay. In terms of, the kind of lyrical meaning and kind of content of the songs and even the kind of vibe of the songs in terms of the kind of spooky feel that you get from a lot of the songs. It all kind of stemmed from this idea that I had about, looking at the two sides of yourself, the dark and the light, and really kind of diving into the darker sides, the sides that we tend to, shy away from more often than not, and shedding light on them. And that light is kind of like Shadowlight, and also the kind of idea of a space in between dark and light, I think, is also Shadowlight. So it kind of has a few different meanings to me personally, and also to how we've applied it to the album as a whole. But that's kind of the whole general idea of it is based around this concept of shadow work.
Nice. You really take center stage on this record. You're on the album artwork. All the single artwork is photographs of you. Like, what led to that decision to really just focus on you and all these different, I guess it's that Shadowlight theme of all these different lighting elements and fixtures and it
definitely does really focus on me. And some people might be quite surprised that, that took some convincing on my part. That wasn't something that came from me. I wasn't like, guys, I want to be front and center, which I sometimes worry that people might think. That just was not the case.
Hey, you're the front woman. Like, people, you're just like, this is my band.
Exactly. It was the total opposite. It was literally all the guys being like, right, I think we need to really focus down what our formation is, like what, our kind of USP is, because that is something that, pretty much everyone that we've worked with has said from the get-go, is that I am the USP of our band, being a black woman in an alternative metal band. That's not very common. And yeah, so we were kind of just talking about, what does the kind of strongest version of our band look like? And it was determined that it does look like, me kind of front and center, us showcasing the USP as much as possible. And because the whole idea for all of the songs and the project that we were working on was all centered around my kind of initial idea and this whole journey that I was going through with discovering the shadow, it kind of just made sense to kind of align the two. Yeah. And I had this idea, this concept for Shadow Cherry, this shadow version of myself with the dark makeup and the black eyes and everything for a while. That was like I think I had the idea for that concept really before we had any proper songs for the album. And so, yeah, it kind of just made sense for me and that idea to really be what we pushed for this entire cycle. So that's what we've been doing.
There are currently 7 singles out on a 10-track album. What's your perspective on kind of how the music industry has shifted and this, like, so many labels, the push is to have, almost the whole damn record on Spotify before release day, right?
It is different. It's very different to how it was when I was, kind of growing up and even in the early stages of this band. Yeah. It's different in terms of like the release plan and how people consume music these days. It is pretty much mostly based on singles, as much as I hate to admit it, because I am still a big advocate of the album. But, people's attention span is just getting shorter and shorter each year. So, the idea to do lots of singles did come from our label. But we were really excited about it because they were so excited about it. And the way they kind of presented it to us was, we do want to give people as much of this as soon as possible because it's so great, basically. Yeah. I've kind of been hot and cold on it in terms of my own feelings about it, just because, on the one hand, I have loved and been really excited by all of these singles, and being able to give each song that we have put out its own time in the limelight. But yeah, there is a part of me that's like, oh, when people get this album, there's only a few songs that they won't have actually heard before. Yeah. That they'll get to hear, But, we're working on new music all the time. We'll probably follow it up fairly quickly, in 2025 again, because people's attention span is short. Right. Gotta keep going, right? Ride the hype train. But I am really, really excited for people to hear the songs that they haven't heard yet, because they are quite different actually to everything else. So that's going to be quite cool.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I do like artists giving more of their songs to people as like, hey, check this out, and not just like the single, because you could release 3 songs and the album comes out and people don't listen to it, but they might check out a single every month, every 2 weeks for 8 weeks that you're putting it out. But it is a big change from like peak Britney Spears era, where it's like the album would come out and then they drop like 5-6 singles. It's just a change of perspective. It's fascinating. And people like us who want the album are going to get the album, because you put the work into the track listing and how the album should go, right? Like that still matters. So
exactly, especially for this one, there's it's a whole theme from dark into light, and that is represented in the visuals around the artwork as well, like the actual sleeve and everything. It literally goes from like a dark pages into light pages and everything. And the album, order in terms of like the songs and the feeling that you get from the songs, it also does that. So there is definitely something to it. But I am also glad that people have already heard so much of it, because exactly what you said is true. And actually, literally just the other week, I was listening to In the Balance, and I was listening to some songs that basically no one's heard. And I was thinking, these are so good. Like, musicianship, they're some of our best songs, and no one knows about them. It's so sad.
Album's out in a week and a half. I looked on your website. You guys got a bunch of tour dates through the end of this year, kicking off next year with shows. Is that the plan, to just like hit the road and try to promote this record? I know every band has a different perspective on how to tour within the album now. That's also been upended.
Yeah, and that's definitely something we're still navigating, because we barely toured the second album, to be honest. But yeah, that is the plan for this one, is to basically just tour it as much as possible. As far as next year goes and our plans for next year goes, we have the shows that we've already announced at the end of January, start of Feb. And our plan is to just try and fill the year with as many shows as possible, whilst also working on a few songs and popping them out as well. So, yeah.